The last thing we need to do for the plate tectonics unit is to talk about how these plates interact. So basically, the plate boundaries. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through the convergent boundaries where they come together so you can see the arrows coming together, convergent boundaries. The places where the plates move apart, divergent. Okay, we see the arrows moving apart, those are divergent boundaries. And then places where the plates slide next to each other. And you can't really see them on this map. The only one that they're showing really very well is this one in here, the San Andreas Fault in California. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through those three plate boundaries and show you what happens at each. We're going to start with divergent boundaries. We're going to draw a picture, we're going to talk about the landforms that are there, and then give some examples. First, the picture is going to be pretty simple. We've pretty much made it before. It's going to be a simple version like this. I'm going to put arrows like that. Okay, it should look familiar because that is a mid-ocean ridge. So landform, mid-ocean ridge. That's what that's supposed to say at least, mid-ocean ridge. What's in the center of the mid-ocean ridge? Well, that would be a valley. So valleys. Other landforms, I guess you could just say oceans if you wanted to say oceans or seas. So I'll say ocean slash seas. So ocean slash seas. Are we going to have any earthquakes at divergent boundaries? Yes, but they're not going to be very severe earthquakes because they're going to be really shallow. There's not much, there's nothing pushing together, so nothing's going down, nothing's really building up much pressure. So I'm going to say shallow, that means not deep. Okay, so shallow and weak earthquakes. So these earthquakes, if you get a magnitude 5 earthquake in this area, let's go to EQ, that would be pretty high. Most of these earthquakes are going to be in the 3 to 4s and less range. Let's get some examples of divergent boundaries. So look at your map and you're looking for arrows moving apart. Well, here's a good one here. So what is this? That's the Atlantic Ocean. So Atlantic Ocean. Or if you wanted to say Mid-Atlantic Ridge instead, you could do that. So you could say Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Other examples you're looking for, obviously the East Pacific Rise could work too. But right in here, okay, these arrows are going apart. Also up in here. So that's the Red Sea and East Africa. So those are good examples too. So Red Sea and East Africa. And I'll show you some pictures. That says East Africa. Not running very well today. Another good example, what is this island right here? That is Iceland. So Iceland is a great example of this, and I'll show you pictures of that. Oh, one landform I got to put here, Iceland made me remember, we will have rift volcanoes. Rift volcanoes. Rift volcano, pretty simple idea. It's when the earth splits open and lava comes out. Okay, so the earth is splitting open and lava comes out. Here's a picture of a rift volcano here. This happens a lot, like I said, in Iceland is a good example. This is the valley that's splitting Iceland in half. You see it in this picture here. Half of Iceland is on the North American plate moving to the west. Half of it's on the Eurasian plate moving to the east. So Iceland is actually getting ripped in half. And sometimes when it rips, lava spits out. And this big trench here, I should say valley, this big valley gets filled with lava. We'll see a video about the people in the town of Jaime trying to save their town from this lava. It's a great video. They fight it with water. So we'll see that in our volcano unit. Okay, so that's a good example. This again, the Iceland Rift Valley. You can see how big it is. There's an airplane. And this will fill all the way up with lava sometimes. People walking in a Rift Valley here, another Rift Valley here. The people of Iceland, they get almost all of their power from volcanoes. They have pipes that run into this rift valley full of water. The volcano heats the water to boiling, it comes out as steam, and it turns their turbines and generates their electricity. So really they have perfect renewable energy because they're using the Rift Valley and the volcanoes for their energy. This is showing the East African Rift Valley in the Red Sea. So you see the Red Sea, East African Rift Valley. East African Rift Valley is a failed rift zone. So usually when a continent is going to split up, it splits in three sections. So you see this tripart. So one split here, and then one split here. And usually one of them fails. Okay? That just happens. One of them fails. That's this. But you see all these lakes here because it is lower. We find the oldest, I guess what, ancient humans, the Lucy's and that kind of people, that are really ancient humans, in this valley here. It's kind of where maybe humanity started. There's lots of water, really good land in this rift valley. It's really low. So you're seeing pictures of the East African Rift Valley here. More pictures. This is kind of a satellite picture showing this East African Rift Valley. It's so low, that's where it failed to split apart. And again, here, it's where it failed to split apart. But the Red Sea didn't fail to split apart. Okay, it is splitting apart here. That's divergent boundaries. So now we're moving on to transform boundaries. The picture for transform boundary is going to be pretty simple. We're going to do an overhead view. So I'm just going to write overhead view, or you might call it a bird's eye view. Okay, overhead view. I'm just going to put the two plates sliding next to each other. Okay, the two plates sliding next to each other. Could be going opposite directions like I drew there. It could be going the same direction in different speeds. It doesn't matter as long as they're sliding next to each other. They're not separating. They're not converging. They're sliding next to each other. Are we going to have oceans? No. Mountains? No. Well, what are we going to have? They're just sliding next to each other. What are we going to have? We're not going to have much for landforms. We might get rivers where they grind their way through. So if you wanted to put like rivers, you could do that because there's a little bit lower area, but really not going to be too much. Are we going to have earthquakes? Definitely. These two sides, these two plate edges can get stuck together, and so we can have earthquakes. And I'm going to put medium earthquakes. They can be kind of medium depth, and they can also be kind of medium strength. There's nothing really going down. We're going to see in our next one in convergent boundaries and subduction zones that a plate is going down into the earth, so they're really deep ones. But we can have some significant earthquakes. So I put medium earthquakes. There can be some really big earthquakes at these. The best example, the only example you have on your map is not really good. On this one, very good, but it's right in here, or zoomed in right here. It's the San Andreas Fault. That's the main fault that is going through California. San Andreas Fault. The Pacific Plate is moving this direction. North American Plate is moving this direction. So they're sliding next to each other. And we'll see that in some more pictures here. So more pictures. Here's a picture that's showing the San Andreas Fault. Again, lots of times there's rivers and stuff running through here. Here's another picture kind of showing this. Part of California is on the Pacific Plate. Part is on the North American Plate. So it shows you this boundary type. This is not how the plates are moving. North American Plate is moving pretty much to the west, that way, while the Pacific Plate is moving pretty much northwest, like that. So they're rubbing against each other, and that makes earthquakes all along the fault here, or all along the faults. It's not just the San Andreas Fault. There's lots of faults there. And this one shows it again. Kind of an interesting thing to see is that Los Angeles is on the Pacific Plate. San Francisco is on the North American Plate. So if you think in millions of years, 50 million years, 60 million years, Los Angeles is gradually going to be working its way up. So eventually, if everybody's still around and the cities haven't been destroyed by earthquakes, LA will be right next to San Francisco. That part is sliding up. So when people say, oh, California's going to break off into the ocean, no, they're not. A sliver, a little part of California, is going to slide up against the rest of California, but it's not just splitting off and forming an ocean there. Just some more pictures showing these transform boundaries and also the faults that form at them. Here you see a river trying to cross it and has to be observed. This is a San Andreas Fault where it's worn a groove through and you see a river in there. This is a curb in California. You see it's offset. So the road here with the curb and then the curb here, and it's been shifted. Okay, either that way or that way. I don't know which way, but it's been shifted. This is a field. So after an earthquake, the farmer had obviously planted this, whatever it is, potatoes or whatever. The farmer didn't plant them curved like this. That was an earthquake that caused it to slide. You know, whether it's this one this way or this one this way, you can't tell. But either way, it was this transform motion, the sliding next to each other motion. That's transform boundaries. Now we are into convergent boundaries. And if you see on your note sheet, for convergent boundaries, we're doing it in 3 subtypes: continent-continent convergent, ocean-continent convergent, and ocean-ocean convergent. And we're doing it 3 different subtypes because we get different landforms at each one. When we're thinking about these 2 types, think about the differences between continental plates and ocean plates. Ocean plates are really thin and dense, made of things like basalt, dense rocks. Continental plates are thick and not very dense, made of lighter rocks like granites. So that when they interact, different things happen. So we're starting with continent to continent. So we're having 2 not very dense, thick continents smash into each other. So our picture is going to be a side view. It's going to look something like this. There's one continent. There's the other continental plate. They are smashing into each other. Because they're not very dense, they smash in and they go up, making our first landform, making fold mountains. Okay, these mountains are not volcanic. Okay, not volcanic. They're just folded rocks. We have lots of metamorphic rocks in these. These rocks are folded up. You see ones like this in the Himalayas. Other landforms, not really any others. We're going to have earthquakes, definitely. So I'll say medium earthquakes again. Okay, they can be fairly significant earthquakes, but I can say medium. They're not going to be deep because nothing's going down, but there's a lot of rocks smashing into each other, so there's definitely going to be earthquakes. Look at your map, find some examples of this. The best example is here. The Indian-Australian plate smashing into the Eurasian plate. That makes Mount Everest and the Himalayan mountains. So Mount Everest, I'm going to put Himalayas. Okay, the Himalayan mountains. That's really our best example. There are others, the Alps. Okay, so in here, the Alps are an example also. The Himalayas, though, by far our best example. And you can see what's happening. India, the Indian-Australian plate, is smashing into China, essentially, creating the Himalayan mountains where they meet. And it's smashing in a ton. I think the estimates are it's smashing in something like 2 to 3 inches per year. India is smashing into Asia. So the Himalayan mountains are getting taller every year. Okay, rising up. Actually, when they did the new survey of Mount Everest, they found that it was taller than it was previously. I think now they're measuring it at 29,035 feet, I think, which is a few feet higher than when they had surveyed it before. So the Himalayan mountains are growing as India slams in. Of course, there's going to be earthquakes and stuff, which is going to cause pieces to fall, and they're not going to grow forever. But India is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. India is one of the faster moving plates. Somewhere near, I think it's between 8 to 10 centimeters per year, India is moving. The Pacific plate is also a fast one. The Pacific plate is moving quickly, again, somewhere in this, 8 centimeter per year range. About the speed that your fingernails grow. You want to think about it like that. So these plates are not moving very quickly. The Indian Australian is one of the more quick ones. That's it for the Oceancontinent continent. Now we're talking about Oceancontinent Convergent. So now we have a thin ocean plate hitting a thick continental plate. So I'm going to draw something like my thick continental plate. My thin ocean plate is going to dive underneath it because remember, it's more dense. My thin ocean plate is diving underneath my thick continental plate. As it dives underneath, it's going to melt. Some of that is less dense, it's going to work its way up, and it's going to make volcanoes. Now, this whole zone here, let me switch colors really quickly. This whole zone here, that is called a subduction zone. Word you're going to need to know, subduction. Subduction is when something goes underneath something else. So that is a subduction zone. And what do you have at subduction zones? Obviously volcanoes. These are violent volcanoes. We're going to talk about the volcano types next unit. These would be stratovolcanoes, usually, or cinder volcanoes. Okay, very violent volcanoes. What's this here? Okay, right there. That's a trench. Are we going to have earthquakes? Definitely. I'm going to put all earthquakes. Because while it's rubbing, you're going to have earthquakes all along the edge here. So shallow, medium, deep, strong, weak, all types of earthquakes at these boundaries. You can also get things like tsunamis. I'll put it here, it's not really a landform, but tsunamis. Because you are having these earthquakes in the water. Remember, this is an ocean plate, so it's ocean up here. So you can have tsunamis. Examples of these, there are a lot of them. So we don't need to put all of them. Best example, probably it's right here. Nazca plate. I'll point it here first. So right here. Nazca plate is smashing into and under the South American plate. That makes the Andes. Okay, the Andes Mountains. Great example. Another great example is one that we have here in the United States, which is why I had you add it to your map. Remember I had you add the Juan de Fuca plate up here by Oregon and Washington? That Juan de Fuca plate is smashing into the North American plate. That makes Mount St. Helens, Mount Rainier, Mount Adams, Mount Hood, Lawson, all those. So I can put the Cascade volcanoes. So Mount St. Helens and the Cascade volcanoes. So all those volcanoes up in Oregon and Washington, those are all caused by the Juan de Fuca plate subducting underneath the North American plate. Here you can see it in this picture too. Here's a picture of Mount St. Helens erupting. Again, these violent volcanoes. There are other ones. That's enough. Okay, those are two good examples. Then the last type are ocean-ocean convergent. So I have a thin ocean plate hitting another thin ocean plate. What's going to happen is that one of these thin ocean plates is going to dive down beneath the other. What's it called when one dives beneath the other? It's called subduction. So we're going to have a subduction zone. Again. What happens when I'm going to put my water on here just to show you so you remember that it's in the ocean. So I'm going to put my water up here. So what happens when this plate dives down? It's going to melt. Some of that lava is going to come up and it's going to make a volcano in the ocean. We call these island arc volcanoes. we call them island arcs because they're islands, they're in the water. Arc because they are arc-shaped, they're half circle shaped, and of course they're volcanoes. So island arc volcanoes. We have trenches, okay, right there is a trench. Are we going to have earthquakes? Yes, all earthquakes. Again, shallow, medium, deep, all along this boundary. You can have tsunamis again too. If you want to write tsunamis, you can have them because we are in the ocean with these strong earthquakes. Examples, there are tons of them. What you're looking for are two ocean plates smashing together, making an arc of island volcanoes. This one here, a good example, that's this place here, Japan. Japan is a great example. Here, okay, that's right here. Oop, hard to see on this map. Here and kind of continue over here. Those are the Aleutian Islands in Alaska. Okay, Mount McKinley is this kind of the start of the Aleutian Islands. Okay, Mount McKinley would be that ocean continent. Mount McKinley is still on the continent one, but then as we get off, we get all those Aleutian Islands that are volcanoes. Those are examples. Other ones you could have down here, if you wanted to say New Zealand would be a good example. Any of these in here, so the Philippines. Any of these in here, Indonesians, like Sumatra, if you wanted to pick Sumatra, maybe that's a good one because we had that huge tsunami off the coast of Sumatra in 2004. So Sumatra would be a good one. There are just lots and lots and lots of ones that you could put. And that's really it for those. One I forgot to mention, you see Vesuvius here, of the volcano we're going to talk during unit. So if we want to put those, that'd be ocean one. So Mount Vesuvius, I'm sure you've heard about that in 7th grade with the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. It blew up and destroyed them. So that Vesuvius is right here. So that's a good example there. But that's it for really these plate boundaries. Just a little bit review. You see this is a subduction zone with a trench. Okay, the lithosphere diving down, melting, making the volcano. The Nazca going underneath the South America. Remember, that makes the Andes. The Pacific going underneath the Eurasian makes Japan. This is Indian Australian smashing into the Eurasian, making the Himalayas. Okay, not volcanic. This picture kind of combines everything. It shows you the convection cells coming up, spreading, okay, pulling apart the seafloor, making your mid-ocean ridge, so your divergent boundaries. That causes the plate to move this way and smash into another plate and dive under a subduction zone, making your convergent boundary. And then you can't really see it, but they have transformed little splits all along there. So trying to get your whole plate tectonics idea put together in one picture. Okay, the core causes these currents in the asthenosphere, they rise up, they cause the ocean plates to separate. This again, just a picture showing the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. Pacific Ocean is basically the ones that we have been drawing. Again, showing you pretty much the whole process of plate tectonics. The core causes hot spot in one area. These currents rise up in the asthenosphere, split apart, they push and pull the plates to either side, making the mid-ocean ridge with the valley. It's going to subduct underneath in the trenches. It's going to recycle, melt back in again. This is kind of the whole plate tectonics theory in one little picture. Last thing I thought was just kind of cool is just showing, okay, what's going to happen in the future? If these plates are moving, they're not just stopping now, they're going to keep on moving. So it shows you some different views. I actually like the next picture better, so I'm going to skip this one. Oh, you can take a look at it and see what's going to happen going from Cambrian to present. I like the next one better because it shows you, like I said, what's going to happen maybe in the future. If it will go. Hopefully it's going to move. Well, maybe it's going to stop on our last slide. We're not going to get to see the future. No, it is not liking it. Let's see if this will do it. Let's try it really quickly and see if we can get back in it, because it is kind of neat showing you what is possibly going to happen in the future. And we'll just zoom all the way to the end. Maybe we won't zoom all the way to the end. There we go. So it shows you 65 million years ago, basically when the dinosaurs went extinct. You can see that you have things, so things like Tyrannosaurus rex is found in North America, not found in South America because they had already split apart. It's kind of a neat picture. You can see why some animals are found in different places and why the Australian animals might be a little unique. We get present day, and now we get 50 million years into the future, according to this person. So some things. You notice they have the Red Sea is now becoming an ocean. The Red Sea is completely all the way through. India, smaller because it's smashed up there. Australia, remember Australia is moving with India? Australia has moved way higher north. And that's smashed all these islands together in the Philippines. You see a gap here. You see Baja California, and California has slid farther north. You see the Atlantic Ocean has spread wider. So lots of different changes. You can notice a lot of other changes that I'm not pointing out. But it's really pretty interesting to think what's going to happen. And then will eventually all the continents meet on the other side of the Atlantic and form a new supercontinent? Yeah, possibly so. Okay, what will it be called? Well, they actually have a name, but you can look that up for yourself. Okay. So that's it for plate tectonics.